Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for spending your Friday afternoon with us. My name is Yolin, and I would like to welcome you to our off-the-record Indonesian after the TikTok shop ban. So, as usual, we've been playing a song before the event for those who heard it, and I'm asking, can you guys guess what song it is? So, Calvin, you got it right. ID It Satu-satunya. And for those who don't know, this is an Indonesian song, and if you translate it, it means like, I don't know who's wrong, I don't know who's responsible, but I'm not angry anymore, and I don't hate, and I become the person who I am today because of you. So I hope this will set the stage for the event. So thank you, Calvin, for being so sporting. Give yourself a clap. Okay, let's start. Okay, next page. So I think you guys know who we are already, so I'm going to skip the introduction a bit. Okay, so the team joining today, except for me, Yolin, I'm COO. It will be Jangan, CEO of Momentum Works. He has a lot of tea to share today. So I think I'm so happy for you guys to join. And Wei Han, she's the co-author of our reports, e-commerce in Southeast Asia, as well as TikTok Shop report, and she'll be sharing a lot as well. So on that note, next slide. Okay, so in the next 45 minutes, I'm sure the reason why you guys are here is because you are in one way or another curious about what has happened to TikTok Shop in Indonesia. We're going to be covering 5 sections today. The real reason behind the ban, the beneficiary of users and beneficiary and users, impact of the ban to the rest of the world. Will TikTok Shop be able to reverse the ban? And what lessons can we hear from it? If you have any other questions, just start typing in the Zoom, and I will remind Jangan and Wei Han as we go through this deck to try to answer as much as we can. So I think for the record, some of these insights are things that Jangan and Wei Han have been hearing from the grapevine. So we are quite excited to share with you some of the kind of learnings and insights, and hopefully it'll be useful for you guys in your work. Okay. Okay, next page. So I think this is something that is going to be off the record. So I hope that you can actually just be candid, and we can actually have some kind of like interesting sharing. So on this page, past 2, Wei Han, come.
Okay, so thanks, Yolin, for the great introduction. So I think this is just an opening slide from one of our community members who was actually quite surprised at how fast the Indonesian government actually moved forward from the rumors all the way to the actual ban of social media transaction itself. So I think to start off, we will look at what exactly happened over the last month. So I think for most people, we are aware of the entire process of when it started banning. But actually, if you were to look at the entire timeline from 13 July onwards, the Minister of Cooperatives and SMEs, Teten Mas Duki, actually started expressing certain concerns he had with TikTok Shop, especially starting with the Project S. And then afterwards, it escalated to him suggesting the ban of TikTok's e-commerce operations in Indonesia on 4th of September, with the concerns of them becoming a monopoly in the region, in the country, especially given that they have been trying to apply for a license to operate digital payment in Indonesia. And then afterwards, you see that on 12 September, the Deputy Minister of Trade also came out in support of Teten Mas Duki with respect to a potential ban. And afterwards, I think there have been a lot of discussion, and President Jokowi came out to drop a hint that, they have actually been, that there are plans to potentially ban. And boom, on 25th September, the cabinet actually held a meeting, and they officially agreed to banning social media transaction. So afterwards, you can have the Minister of Trade coming out to announce exactly what will take place, and he also has given a 1-week grace period for all the platforms to wrap up any operations that they have with respect to e-commerce if they are a social media platform. So fast forward to October, you have TikTok actually releasing a press release to say that they will be compliant, and eventually on the 4th of September, they have officially shut down all operations of their TikTok shop in Indonesia.
So it's just over the span of 1 month.
Yeah, so it's actually very fast, one
Okay.
month. I think for most people, we know that things in the government actually don't move so fast because there are a lot of consideration and a lot of parties for them to discuss with before they can actually execute the changes in regulations. So yeah, it's pretty surprising how the Indonesian government managed to move along so quickly. So next slide. We have also mentioned in our earlier reports, e-commerce in Southeast Asia, that TikTok is a very formidable player in the ecosystem, especially by how fast they have grown over the past 3.5 years they have been here. They started off with almost nothing, and then they have reached GMV of 4.4 billion last year. And you see that they are actually making waves in terms of how much they're actually achieving up till now. So next slide. If we were to look at our projection that we done in July, we had projected TikTok Shop to be about 13.2% in terms of its market share. But we have also been hearing on the ground that they are actually doing so well in all their markets combined, such that their growth trajectory was already on track to beating what they have set off to target by the end of 2023. So initially they were targeting to have about 15 billion in terms of GMV, but up to September, their growth rate shows that they are on track to exceeding this number to something that is much higher than what we expected. But now you have the ban coming in, and with Indonesia being one of the biggest market, things might change up in terms of their market share and how they stand in Southeast Asia. But we will leave the juiciest part to the very end. So if you're, please do stay tuned to the end if you want to find out exactly what has changed and how we decide to project and try to estimate how the new e-commerce landscape would be like in the future. So back to Indonesia. So this ban and how it would affect TikTok is that TikTok is expected to lose about 3 million parcels a day, and probably translate to about 20 million in terms of GMV per day.
Can I ask, where did you and Jangan get this number from?
We have sources. We hear from the grapevine.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, so if you can see, given that Indonesia is one of it is TikTok's current biggest market, right? You see, this is actually a very substantial amount that it would add up to after the ban officially goes through. So without further ado,
so this is actually a slide that we took from one of the reports, Tech Leaders. And this actually, when we were doing this report, we were just showing the kind of culture and the chicken soup that Chinese companies like Meituan, ByteDance, and Pinduoduo were sharing with their organization. And you can see under the middle part, ByteDance, you can see that this company is excessively data driven, and it has gotten them to be very successful in terms of TikTok Shop. And but I think, like what Jangan said, a lot of things in the world are not just driven by data. Yeah, Jangan, you want to add on to that?
Yeah, so I think we'll go through the details about this in a bit. So sometimes a particular organization, when they are very strong in certain things, that tends to lead them to overlook other things which are probably important when you operate in different markets. But sometimes, I mean, these things are not apparent to you in the beginning until some things happen. And when things happen, you realize that, okay, whether I have the means, capabilities, and connections to actually change things, and sometimes you realize that you don't. And of course, for organization to adjust to this different reality, sometimes it can be actually quite hard, which we'll go through in detail in a bit. Next page, please. Yeah, so of course, so lots of discussion about how this will shake up the ecosystem, right? Who will be the beneficiaries and losers? And of course, we know that, okay, TikTok Shop was doing about $20 million of GMV a day, and when that is gone, how is that volume that people were shopping with be distributed, and who are the stakeholders who have been impacted, and who are the stakeholders who have benefited? So of course, some people would have a natural sort of way to say that, okay, TikTok Shop's competitors are the biggest beneficiaries. Is that really the case? Next page, please. So in this quick section, we'll discuss about 4 types of stakeholders in the ecosystem, which might or might not have been impacted by this ban and the consequences of this ban. So first is the Tanah Abang merchants. Second is the e-commerce platforms, Shopee, Lazada, and Tokopedia, which are competing against TikTok Shop. And the third is the MCNs and sellers, and the last one, logistics providers. Next page, please. So I'm not sure if you guys noticed a few articles which appeared across different media outlets in Indonesia after Minister Teten Masuki made a comment before the ban was enacted. And quite a few articles are talking about merchants in Tanah Abang, which is the textile and other market in central Jakarta. So a lot of people there are saying that, being interviewed are saying that they're asking for TikTok shop to be closed because that apparently, according to them, was impacting the flow of consumers into their market. But of course, you also saw some reports after the ban was enacted, saying that, okay, Tanah Abang sellers are not seeing anybody flowing back to them. So we feel that and of course, when media report things, sometimes they have agenda, especially in Indonesia, and we feel that this issue is quite interesting because I think first when we talk about the sellers in Tanah Abang, and these are the exact people who should be able to benefit from TikTok Shop, and these are exactly the people that TikTok Shop, if they want to operate in Indonesia as a good corporate citizen, that they should seek to enable, right? I mean, you train these people to sell on e-commerce, and you give them a bit of help in terms of traffic, in terms of skills training, in terms sometimes even sourcing capabilities of the goods, and these people can easily become your advocates. And especially when I think Tanah Abang has become a symbol in this whole movement. We didn't see anything coming from TikTok Shop to actually enable these people. And to the contrary, it has been used as a symbol against TikTok Shop. But at the end of the day, so you probably know that that e-commerce is a trend. I mean, how much it takes from offline retail is a question mark. But as a way of organizing retail, if the frequencies are removed, it's actually a very efficient way for people to organize retail. And when you go to the markets in China, you see everybody who is like live streaming, who is selling on Taobao, who is selling on different platforms. And these are the people who should be able to benefit from an ecosystem. But that will require the platforms to actually give them some active help. Next page, please. Amongst a lot of speculations about who is really behind the political lobbying force to get the government to enact the ban. And one player which is often mentioned is Shopee, because we know that, I mean, it's in the news, right? I mean, over the past few years, Shopee has been doing a lot of activities in Indonesia to help the society, from distributing the vaccine to helping the MSMEs export. So there are lots of things that they have done. And of course, a lot of people will interpret this as, okay, Shopee is trying to be close to the government so that they will get preferential treatment whenever there's competition. But you probably know that at the end of the day, that's probably the way that you should operate in any big country, right? I mean, when you are doing business, when you are trying to make money from that market, which has its own sort of way of doing things, has its own pride, you probably need to respect the market a little bit and do some good deeds for the government, especially in times of crisis like COVID. We see that Shopee has done a lot during those periods, and we know that there are lots of activities that they had done which they didn't even publicize. But of course, that goes into the good books of the politicians in Indonesia. People know that, okay, these are the people we can talk to, these are the people we can trust, and these are the people that we know that will not rock the boat. Can the same thing be said about TikTok Shop? There's a big question mark. But specifically about business per se, how has TikTok Shop impacted Shopee? So we look at the numbers in different ways, and we just do not think that until beginning of this year, TikTok Shop has impacted Shopee's existing stock of consumption in a big way. What it has indeed created is they actually grabbed Shopee's potential growth. So if you look at Shopee's GMV, of course they stopped reporting GMV this year, and it has become kind of flattish, which caused lots of debate, right? Many people are saying that, is that because we have reached the saturation for Indonesian e-commerce, or is that because the infrastructure is not supporting it? But when we dig a little bit deeper into the Shopee activities on TikTok Shop, we realize that there are actually lots of people who have been shopping on TikTok Shop who had never shopped at any other e-commerce platform. There's a lot of cash on delivery there as well, and I think when certain sellers are asking their consumers to move to Shopee after the TikTok Shop ban, and many consumers reply saying that, hey, we don't have a Shopee account, or we never use Shopee, we don't know how to use it. So that probably says something. And of course, some people are debating how much percentage of that is how much percentage of these shopping activities, how much percentage of these consumers have never bought in other platform. But I think here the argument is that even if it's a small percentage that gets impacted by TikTok's rapid growth, will probably impact the way the government does the calculation, the way the government actually issues the regulations. Next page, please. Another thing that people have talked about is before TikTok Shop ban was enacted, and Shopee was starting to promote Shopee Live in an aggressive way. And some people are making the association that, okay, Shopee knew that TikTok Shop was going to be banned, and that's why they were sort of preempting this. We don't see that clear linkage there, because fundamentally Shopee Live and TikTok Shop are very different products. I mean, people go to TikTok for entertainment, and TikTok try to convert part of this audience, part of this time spent into e-commerce. People go to Shopee Live, even though Shopee tried to make it like, entertainment focused, a bit of like happy tones that people can spend time on there. Fundamentally, people go to Shopee as an e-commerce platform, not as an entertainment platform, which means that Shopee continuously need to attract people to go to their platform. Shopee Live itself is not something that the people would go and linger naturally. So as a result, I think these two are fundamental different things, and we can see from the actual feedback from the ground. So after TikTok Shop was actually banned, and after all this sort of volume and this shopping activities disappeared, how much search activity do you see in Shopee Live? Not much. So, and from the logistic providers, they don't see much search of volume that's passing through other platforms. So which means that a lot of the activities that has been happening on TikTok Shop was something that people didn't plan to buy, or something people were previously planning to buy offline. And we also mentioned earlier that a lot of this shopping happens in categories like cosmetics, skincare, fashion, and many of these shopping activities were impulse shopping, and it was not something that people were planning for. So when it disappeared, it probably just disappeared. And for the other platforms to capture this volume back into e-commerce will probably take a while.
So, Jangan, just to pause you there. So there's a question from the community, and this is off the record. Why did the government not target the other e-commerce players like Shopee that has live and e-commerce, or will they be the next targets? What's the sense of the record? What's your perspective?
Okay, so first, the government is an obscure term, right? I mean, who exactly is in the government? Who is making that decision, and what's the incentive of that decision maker? And does he have the ability to actually push this through quickly? And some of you might remember about 2 years ago, was that 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago? I think Shopee was targeted by certain political forces, and I remember there was a member of parliament um, in the parliament saying that, okay, this is the hijab, which is the Muslim headscarf produced in Bandung, Indonesia. This is the hijab that's been sold on Shopee, and whatever that's been sold on Shopee is cheaper than whatever that it cost us to produce in Bandung. So what can be done? But what you do see after that was a discussion between Shopee and the relevant stakeholders, and at the end of the day, Shopee's cross-border activities were cut by a lot deliberately. So I think even before the current like $100 regulation, which we'll talk about in a bit, Shopee's cross-border activities are actually very, very small. So obviously that means that, okay, they have been having a discussion with the government. They understand, or they at least they try to understand the concerns that the government has, and they try to sort of modify their platforms in a way that suits the concerns of the government. We don't know exactly what happened between the dialogue, whether there was dialogue between TikTok Shop and the government before the ban was enacted, but whatever it was, I think there was no effective communication for sure, because lots of the things that were cited in the ban and could have been managed by both parties if they had a proper dialogue.
Okay. Okay, let's move on, and I will moderate the questions as they come along. Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. Next page, please. What's happening with other e-commerce platforms? And of course, here you see Lazada, and by our friend James Chan, who is is he the only like co-founder type from the original Lazada gang who is still remaining with the team, maybe? But anyway, so he said that he basically started to get some of the sellers from TikTok Shop to move to Lazada by offering some incentives, which is, I think it's a natural course of action, right? Because there will be lots of sellers, lots of stakeholders who are confused. We have the goods, we don't know where else to sell, and of course, I mean, somebody offering an olive branch is probably helpful. And how much impact that will have over the long term, we think it's minimal. So in the short term, you offered people some olive branch, and you onboarded some sellers. But what we would think is that for the sellers who are able to who are here for the long term, they would have, or sellers or brands, they would have already explored different platforms and having a bit of volume here and there. And for those who have just focused on TikTok Shop, it probably takes quite a bit of adjustment, because operating on a platform like Lazada and Shopee would require different skill sets. Interesting part of what happened at GoTo, and I know lots of you have realized that there was a results release of GoTo financials, I think Q3 financials, and most of the investors I've talked to did not really actually read it, because I don't think many people are looking at GoTo as the investment target now. But one thing interesting is that the GoTo recently, in the past few months, had hired Sophie Xue, who used to be the chief people officer of Lazada, to become the chief HR officer. I know that I think Sophie can be a controversial figure during her time at Lazada, but we do know that I think GoTo needs a bit of guidance and leadership, because it's a merger of Gojek and Tokopedia. Both companies having very, very different cultures, having very, very different ways of doing things, and there has not been much synergy built after the merger. And exactly what's going to happen to the company, and how they are going to make sure that each of the three businesses within the group function correctly, and putting them in the same group would actually give them a boost rather than tearing things down. So these are things that are probably then to figure out from a leadership and an organizational point of view, and that's probably going to take quite a bit of effort. But the good thing is that we know for sure that their major competitors like Grab, like Shopee, would want to make sure that, I mean, Gojek and Tokopedia as individual businesses would survive in the market, because nobody wants to completely crush the national champion of Indonesia, then become the target of different political forces. And we have seen that happening in other markets before. Next page,
So, okay, John, before you move on to the next one, I think there's two questions in the community. People are just wondering after TikTok ban, how is Shopee Live effective, and what is the sales like at Shopee's order volume? Would you have any insights on that, or it's too early to tell?
I think there are lots of things happening, right? So when Shopee was trying to respond to TikTok Shop's search, they tried different ways, and probably they spend a lot in marketing in Q3 with different activities, and it's probably a bit difficult to isolate whether it has been effective or which factor has been effective. So it's I would not be able to draw that conclusion now. But what we do know is that in terms of absolute volume on Shopee, it has not moved much after TikTok Shop ban.
Okay, so let's move on. So I think the next question would be, how does the TikTok Shop ban affects last minute delivery in Indonesia, especially
Last month,
JNT?
right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So I think it goes nicely to the next page. Yeah. Okay.
That's the following page, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Next page. So of course, lots of MCNs and sellers have been impacted. We've heard a lot of stories, right? I mean, some of the MCNs from China, the owners would flee the country overnight when the ban was enacted. We didn't know exactly why, and so probably some cash flow issues, because we know that lots of people were preparing for the year-end promotions. So that lots of people have, got into contracts to hire lots of people. Lots of people have stocked the inventory. And not many people know how to sell effectively or how to sell at all in across other channels, e-commerce channels as well as offline. So the way we look at it, right? I mean, for people who have been impacted, but it's manageable, are the people who have been able to have diversified channels across online and offline. And those who have had a heavy impact are especially some of the venture funded ones, which leverage TikTok very effectively to grow volume very quickly, and some of those didn't really consider how to sell effectively across other platforms, and even if they do, and the other platforms will not be probably be able to offer them the growth that TikTok had been able to give them. So the significant impact, of course, would be the MCNs and their employees, and some of you have seen videos probably on TikTok of how certain MCNs have hired like hundreds of TV hosts and get them into doing live streaming, etc., etc. So that created lots of job opportunities. But does this have a long-term impact? I thought about that, because many of these jobs are created fairly recently, and it's not that okay, you're making some structural change to the market. You are attracting people who were previously working on other jobs to come here. And when that's taken away, I don't think there's a fundamental sort of impact on the economy. Of course, short term, there will be lots of people who complain about it, who said, okay, I just hired 50 influencers. Now I can't do anything. I have to fire them. And of course, the people who have just been hired and fired would not feel happy about it. But the long-term consequences, if the government sticks with this regulation, I don't think there's much long-term consequence for that.
So there's a question on this note, right? And could you elaborate more? This is a very fundamental question. Could you elaborate more? Why do you think the previous TikTok ID buyers find it hard to switch to other marketplaces platforms? So I think the ecosystem is very different. We actually went into detail in our live commerce report published last year, but maybe Jagan, maybe you can actually elaborate briefly on why the two ecosystems are very different: the TikTok Shop ecosystem versus the non live commerce ecosystem.
I think you don't even need to go to that. I mean, just look at the assortment of things which are being bought and sold on TikTok Shop. I mean, significant percentage of that is cosmetics, healthcare, so skincare and fashion, and a lot of this buying activities were previously happening offline. So we do see that because we had done a bit of field work in that sector before, we do see that a few sort of cosmetic shops actually complaining about offline shops complaining about them losing their sort of customers to online, because people would previously that go to offline shops and try a few things. I mean, if they want to buy water, they buy water. If they don't want, they try a few things. Then they have the beauty advisors to advise them what to buy. But now a lot of activities have been happening online, and I think an argument that the proponents of the ban were saying is that this platform potentially caused the bottom of the society, the ones which were previously not using any commerce platform because of various reasons, to actually spend excessively on e-commerce for things that they didn't need. And of course, we asked a few stakeholders, and nobody had data to back or argue against that particular notion. But apparently, we think that this was one of the consideration of the government, right? People spent their money, especially people at the bottom of the society, spend on their money on something they see on social media, something that they don't necessarily need, and that could be potentially disruptive to the economy, especially if you look at how Indonesian government has been focusing on MSMEs, right? The statistics from the government, 64 or 65 million MSMEs, and most of them micro, employing 109 million people. So that's almost half of the society working for these small businesses. And if they get disrupted, and if there's no way for them to find other jobs, and it could be destabilizing force for the society.
Okay. Let's move on. I hope that answered your question. Good question, Eva. Okay, let's go. Next page. Yes, and yes, logistic providers. Yes.
Logistic providers, it has actually been impacted a lot, and we know that most of the volumes of TikTok Shop were handled by J&T Express. Not because, I mean, people have been making lots of arguments of J&T Express being J&T Express being close to Shopee, J&T Express being close to Pinduoduo, etc., etc. And of course now, I mean, in most of the Southeast Asian markets, and maybe not most, but in many Southeast Asian markets, and J&T Express handles most of the TikTok Shop volume. Not necessarily because, I mean, they have good personal relationship or whatever. It's mainly because, I mean, they are the only third-party logistic provider who can surge the volume so quickly because of the way they manage things, because of their franchise model, etc., etc. They could handle that volume. And of course, most of the volume in Indonesia has been taken away because of the ban, and it will probably be recovered, but it probably will not be very soon through the natural growth of the market, or if TikTok shall manage to reverse the ban sometime next year. But in the meantime, we see some activities in other markets in Southeast Asia, where both Shopee and TikTok Shop are actually putting more resources, so that could potentially recover some of the volumes. But I also do think that that Shopee is heavily prioritizing Shopee Express for logistics.
So somebody was saying that in our community that Steve was saying that the drop at J&T Express in Indonesia is about almost 50%.
They lost most of the volumes that we mentioned in a previous page, so it's fairly significant. And in terms of the revenue, it's probably even higher proportion because Shopee having their own sort of logistics, and the amount of money they're willing to pay per parcel is probably lower compared to TikTok.
Mm-hmm. And J&T just went public recently, right?
I think J&T is actually a remarkable story, right? I mean, a group of people coming from China started selling phones in Indonesia. They tried to find a local partner to work with. They realized no partner would work with them unless the net margin is 20% or above. So they went on their own and they built an amazing distribution business. And on top of that distribution business, that they built e-commerce logistic company which surged with volume of Shopee. And then they went to all the markets in Southeast Asia. They went to the Middle East. They went to Latin America. And that I think is really, really great feat that they actually went back to China. So people have been saying a lot about what they have been doing, whether it's sustainable or not. But daring to go back to China to fight in this purple ocean of e-commerce logistics shows some boldness and some gut.
Okay. So anyway, there's a report called Who is JNT that we released earlier this year, so you can just check it out. And let's move on with this presentation. Okay, next slide. Okay, come.
Yeah. There's another thing which some of you might have noticed, which happened around the same time as the ban on social media processing payment and transactions, which is the $100 rule. So basically saying that foreign cross-border e-commerce goods of value below $100 are banned from e-commerce platforms. This has caused actually lots of uncertainty and lots of confusion. We know lots of people who were previously selling things and now they are not, and they are afraid to sell and they stopped their activities because they don't know what would consider a violation of this rule. And we do know that there are lots of people who have been buying from cross-border platforms to resell in Indonesia, and of course, I mean, many of these activities are stopped as well. So that has some knock-on effect, right? I mean, if I buy, I don't know, 20 pieces of something from overseas, and I don't know how to import properly, but I buy it, I resell through social media, through other platforms, and there are some knock-on effects on that. We do know that the exact implementation of this rule is still not clear. So exactly how this will happen, we don't know yet. But I think this will probably cause some weird effects because Indonesia is expecting their MSMEs to export. And I think some platforms like Shopee are actively facilitating this process. And we'll try to sort of export your goods, which are oftentimes below $100. And when you are not importing goods of the same sort of caliber, and I don't know what kind of message that sends to other markets, other countries, and other decision makers. Next page, please. I think I've talked a lot. I'll pass it to Wihan for a while.
Okay, so just to give everyone a short break from Jangan, he will come back very soon. So I'll take over for the next section, which is talking about what exactly will the impact be to the rest of the world. So to start off, we can see that there's somehow a domino effect in Southeast Asia. You are seeing a lot of countries being inspired to potentially do a similar ban or to take a bit of a closer look into what TikTok Shop is actually doing in that country. So you have the Minister of Communication and Digital of Malaysia coming out saying that, asking the ministry to look into the actions that are taken by the Indonesian government. And you also can see that the director of Vietnam's Authority of Broadcasting, Television, Electronic Information, and this is part of the ministry looking at how cross-border platforms, if they don't comply with local regulations, they would be unwelcome in the country. So this kind of sounds like what the Indonesian minister has been trying to push in the first place. But we should also take a step back and think that all these countries ultimately have their own dynamics and their own concerns about, let's say, how the e-commerce players would eventually affect their people. And moreover, this is also, we're seeing also the first time that the Indonesian government is taking such a swift and fast action to stop this ban. And it, as mentioned earlier, it is very unlikely for governments to actually pull through with all these decisions so fast. The more likely course of actions that we would expect the governments or these countries to take in the future is more of like them taking a step back first and observing exactly what would happen after Indonesia issues this ban. How would it affect the local sellers? How would it affect the platforms? And ultimately, how would it affect the entire economy as a whole? Because this is probably something that you won't want to joke with, considering the fact that e-commerce could potentially contribute a huge chunk of the GDP to these countries. So
there's actually some question on the ground. Let me just try to address it here to Jangan and Wehan. How much do you estimate TikTok will be burning in the rest of Southeast Asia? Will they be committing resources to make comeback Indonesia and maybe the other countries, even if they need to build a separate app? I think that one is a very popular question.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think for Indonesia now, because they have this ban, so what these social platforms have to do is that they have to apply for a license first. So regardless of whether they will relaunch TikTok Shop or something, they would have to go through the entire application of the process, in which I think the Indonesian government has mentioned that there is no such actions taken by TikTok as of now. Yeah, so perhaps likely because they are forced to abruptly stop their Indonesia operations, for them, I think it's more likely for them to try to continue to sustain their other markets in the meanwhile. So that would probably they would have to burn some money there. But ultimately, I don't think TikTok could afford to lose Indonesia as a whole. So while they try to figure out how they should proceed forward with their Indonesian operations, they would probably do their very best to keep the entire company or the entire operations in Southeast Asia afloat.
And I guess they will also learn from what's happening in Indonesia in other countries to be a bit more aware and sensitive as well, right?
I think Jangan has something to add.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying that we're dealing with a very large organization called ByteDance, and of course they have different departments, they have different managers who need to come together to make a decision. I think from leadership point of view, they don't want to give up Indonesia for sure. From the coordination of different departments of how to figure that out, I think that would take a bit of a coordination, a bit of time.
Okay, let's move on. Shall we move on? We have 10 more minutes.
Yeah, 10 more minutes. We still have a lot to cover.
There's lots of questions.
Okay.
Lots of questions. Yeah, come.
So I think ultimately, a lot of people would know that TikTok Shop recently officially launched in the US. And you can see that currently US is contributing a daily GMV of around $10 million. Like, even though this is approximately half of what Indonesia is contributing to TikTok Shop, but we should not forget that the US is actually a very big market. So TikTok Shop would likely try to push more in the US, considering the fact that they have a much more affluent consumer base, and they also have a lot of small sellers that are trying to leverage on this platform to actually reach people beyond their community.
There are lots of Chinese sellers. There are lots of Chinese sellers who have been selling on Amazon, who have been having their goods stocked in the US, who have been sort of registered as US entities, who are very scared about Amazon's rules of abrupting, like canceling stores or stuff. So this would be the natural sort of sellers which would be selling on TikTok Shop, and don't forget that that Black Friday and Boxing Day are coming. So if you use that well, it will be a significant boost of volume in the US.
Okay. So let's move on. So I think there are rumors on the ground that saying Meta and YouTube are actually applying for e-commerce license in Indonesia. So to give a slight background, these platform companies are actually, I would say, quite involved in terms of the entire e-commerce related activities. Unlike TikTok, they serve more as to like facilitate part of the social commerce journey. You have a lot of Indonesian consumers using Facebook Marketplace, Instagram Shop to sell or advertise their products. But because Facebook doesn't close the entire transaction on the platform itself, many of them actually take it through WhatsApp or to third-party websites to actually complete the transaction. And as for YouTube's case, a lot of them like to use YouTube for watching reviews, or to actually share, for the influencers to actually share affiliate links so that consumers can actually buy these products off the external site. So I think despite them not having the proper e-commerce functionalities that TikTok Shop actually have, they have something that TikTok does not have. And I think Jangan will be a better person to talk about this because they have a very huge support system backing them.
I think you guys, if you probably remember that that in the Congress hearing, the CEO of TikTok mentioned that okay, TikTok is a Singapore-based company that has a parent company in China called ByteDance. So while all these American companies can use the lobbying forces of the American government and associated organizations, Chamber of Commerce, etc. TikTok Shop is probably in a very delicate situation where they have some resources that I think the Chinese government is able to offer in terms of lobbying, in terms of influence, and they can't take it. So this is a delicate situation here.
Okay, then the billion-dollar question, the trillion-dollar question: will TikTok Shop be able to reverse the ban? Jangan, Weihan, what's your thoughts?
I think since we're running out of time, let me quickly take this one. So I think it is possible because elections are coming and there will be a reshuffle of influences of political factions, political forces. So it can be done, but that requires a lot of delicate work, right? Engaging with different stakeholders, understanding their concerns, and hearing them out, and being able to offer them solutions to be mutually beneficial. So that would require lots of engagement. That would require lots of talking. And that will require the trust to be built across different stakeholders. So that will take time. So the question is that how much patience does the leadership of ByteDance or TikTok have for that? So what we see as a likely cause is that people who are undertaking these activities would have lots of pressure, especially in the short term, and that pressure would mount unless there's a breakthrough. So we're not sure whether there's any high level discussion between the Indonesian government stakeholders as well as the founders of ByteDance. And if that is happening, things will probably move faster. But regardless, next page. We need to be mindful of this timeline, the election timeline, because lots of things which are uncertain until things get clarity in October next year.
Next slide. Yeah.
Okay. What lessons can we learn from this? I think quickly, next page. Three things. Data-driven is not everything. So we know that ByteDance is very famous for its OKR, for its data-driven culture. But in a large country, high context, high touch, but lots of things which you can't effectively map into a KPI or OKR for your manager. And things will only be apparent when things happen, like what we saw happening last month. And how exactly should you mold that kind of responsibility into organization? If it's not a co-founder taking care of this responsibility, who else should be doing that? And what kind of sort of OKR should you give that person or that team? That's a question mark. And second, it's not only about China-US geopolitics. We understand that, okay, there's this big undercurrent going on between China and US, and TikTok itself is caught in a very delicate situation. But here we're dealing with a large country which has its own system and which has its own pride, which, as we discussed just now, has its own. It's not built for other countries, so you have to navigate their own. So, and the last point, can you move like 2 slides down or 3 slides down? The last point, and we see that lots of issues facing Chinese companies expanding overseas, and many of the issues we see here, even though TikTok Shop is much more efficient and operationally much more aggressive compared to some of the Chinese companies we have seen in the past, and we still see the same issues, right? I mean, when you navigate across different market, how does your leadership, your organization, and your people deal with the complexities that's thrown at you? 2 pages down.
Okay, so I think on this note, Jangan, I think the localization is the key thing, and we are going towards 4 o'clock soon. I'm getting a lot of questions about about the different things. If you want to find out anything that we didn't cover in this talk, please reach out to us privately. I think we'll be more than happy to spill a bit more tea. Yeah. So then
What
I
is
think
T?
it's more like it's still a lot more insights about things that we know, like some of the
Okay.
juicy information that could be useful, right? So,
Mm.
but I think the message is that it's just more than just data driven. I think there's lots more insights and politics that people need to be aware of in a way. Yeah, that's T.
I
Yeah.
think you need to show the next page.
Next page, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
This is the final one. This is for those who stay until the end. Yeah.
Okay. So
What does
we have revised the projections for the market a little bit, and we know that lots of people quoted our numbers, 13.2% market share in Southeast Asia for TikTok Shop, and because I mean between July, August, and September, they were actually beating the expectations. The volume actually went up quite a bit. Even if you assume, which is probably the case, that there's completely no volume from Indonesia in the whole fourth quarter, and even if we assume that okay, they are not going to be more aggressive in other markets, which we see now they are being a bit more aggressive in some of the other markets, and we will still see a higher sort of a market share if you take the whole year, 13.9%. And of course, a lot of things would continuously evolve, and we'll probably see Shopee's the actual performance in a few weeks' time, and at the end of the day, this is still evolving, and we still haven't seen Temu doing big time in Southeast Asia now, because they're focusing on, as we said, the Black Friday and also the major shopping festivals in the West. But a lot of things are still evolving. So this is a space that we'll continuously watch.
So will you be writing this projection end of the year as well? Tangan and Weihan?
We'll keep the actual in January or February.
In January, okay. So watch this space, guys. Thank you so much for still staying over 2 minutes late. Weihan, can I trouble you to play the song Satu Satu for those who didn't hear it just now? Thank you. Have a good weekend, everybody. And here's the song in case you missed it just now.
Kini kau tak sendiri lagi. Aku